Okay, think about Roman roads for a second. Incredible engineering, right? Spanning this huge empire.
Absolutely staggering.
But here's something interesting. Maybe you know this, maybe you don't. Their main point wasn't really connecting to Rome.
Mm,
It was more about getting legions out of Rome quickly.
right, for deployment.
Yeah,
It's a subtle but important distinction.
exactly. Welcome, everyone, to the deep dive. Today, we're taking a closer look at the Roman Empire.
Yeah, we've pulled together quite a bit of material, different historical sources, trying to paint, well, a fuller picture of Roman civilization.
From the myths they told themselves right through to how people lived day to day and eventually, how things changed.
It's a huge topic, obviously.
Yeah.
So our goal here is really to pull out some of the most, let's say, illuminating bits, those details that make you go, ah, okay.
Yeah, forget the dry dates and battles for a minute. We want those surprising details, the things that maybe challenge common assumptions about Rome.
Get a real feel for what made them tick.
Okay, so let's dive in. Where better to start than, well, their origin stories? How did the Romans see themselves coming into being?
Well, it's fascinating because they didn't just have one story. They sort of layered them. You've got Aeneas, first off.
The Trojan hero.
Exactly. Flees Troy, journeys to Italy. It's epic. And it cleverly connects Rome to the, prestigious world of Greek mythology.
Gives them a noble ancestor.
Right. Aeneas supposedly brought these core values, duty to family, city, gods. It's like establishing their credentials from the very beginning.
Like good branding almost. Okay, so that's the Greek connection. But then there's the really famous one.
Romulus and Remus.
Yeah. Sons of Mars, abandoned, saved by a wolf. It's pure legend.
Very dramatic. Born from a god, nursed by an animal. It sets them apart.
But it's not all heroic, is it? I mean, the founding involves Romulus killing Remus,
Mm-hmm.
fratricide right at the foundation. And yeah, the Romans seems, well, pretty comfortable with that violent start.
What does that tell us, do you think? Maybe something about their character, a certain ruthlessness, perhaps, whatever it takes attitude to building and defending their city.
So you have the noble Trojan lineage and this raw, almost brutal founding. It's quite a mix.
It is. And together, these myths created this powerful sense of identity, maybe even destiny.
Okay, so that's their founding story. Now, how did they actually structure their society, especially early on? Let's talk about the patricians.
Right. So under the early kings, the patricians were basically the leading families, the advisors, kind of an aristocracy.
But they evolved, right? Became more than just advisors.
Yeah, they solidified into this hereditary upper class. They held all the key posts, political, religious, military. It was very much their show initially.
Which leads us to the Republic. That was a massive shift and not exactly peaceful.
No, not at all. The change from kings to the Republic in 509 BC, the traditional story hinges on a really shocking event.
The rape of Lucretia.
Exactly. A respected patrician woman, violated by the king's son. Her subsequent suicide sparked this huge public outrage.
So people just rose up.
They did. They kicked out the monarchy
Yeah.
and established the public thing, the republic. Power shifted, at least in theory, to the people acting through elected officials.
And the Senate.
Yeah,
That becomes central, right?
absolutely. Composed of these wealthy, influential men, the Senate held enormous power throughout the republic. It was a major turning point born out of tragedy.
Okay, so we have the structure. Let's shift gears to beliefs. What was the Roman approach to the divine? Sounds like they had gods for everything.
They really did. The Roman worldview was packed with deities and spirits. They believed gods protected almost everything, places, activities, households.
So like a spirit of the doorway, a god of the harvest.
Pretty much, yeah. And you had to keep them happy. Appeasement through rituals, offerings. It was crucial for ensuring things went well. It was very practical, almost. If it exists, it probably has a god.
And then, of course, the Greek influence is huge here.
Oh, massive. They essentially adopted the whole Greek pantheon. Just gave them Roman names.
Zeus becomes Jupiter, Ares is Mars.
Aphrodite is Venus, yeah. But their roles, their stories, their domains, largely the same. This Greco-Roman pantheon really formed the bedrock of their state religion for centuries.
Until Christianity, obviously.
Right. Until Christianity gradually took over.
But they weren't totally closed off to other influences, were they? I remember reading about Eastern cults becoming popular.
No, they were surprisingly open, actually. As the empire expanded, they encountered new gods and often incorporated them.
Like Isis from Egypt.
Exactly. Isis became really popular, especially with women, after Egypt was absorbed. And then there's Mithra.
The Persian god. Popular with soldiers, I think.
Very popular with the legions, yeah. These mystery cults, like Mithraism, offered a more personal connection, initiation rituals. It shows how adaptable Roman religion could be.
Interesting. Okay, let's get grounded again. Literally. Infrastructure. Those Roman roads. We mentioned their military purpose at the start.
Yes, the roads,
Yeah.
legendary stuff. And yeah, while we say all roads lead to Rome, functionally, they were designed for troops moving out. Fast deployment was key.
And they all started from that one point in the Forum.
The golden milestone? Yep. Miliarium Aureum. That was the symbolic 0 point. Milestones marked the distance along these incredibly long routes.
And they weren't messing around with construction, were they? Straight lines, built to last.
Absolutely. Roman engineers aimed for directness. They'd cut through hills, bridge valleys, proper heavy-duty construction. Layers of stone, gravel, sometimes concrete.
How many kilometers are we talking?
The main network was something like 85,000 kilometers. An astonishing achievement, connecting the whole empire.
Mind-boggling. I guess sticking with infrastructure, but maybe less glamorous. Sanitation, sewers.
Right, the Cloaca Maxima, Rome's main sewer. It probably started as just an open stream, which they gradually covered over.
But I imagine that got pretty grim as the city grew.
Oh, definitely. Especially in summer. The stench must have been awful.
What did they do?
Ingenious solution, really. They tapped into their aqueduct system, used the constant flow of fresh water to flush the sewers out.
Connecting two major engineering feats. Speaking of aqueducts, 11 major ones. That's incredible.
11, yeah. Bringing vast amounts of water into the city. The total length was around 480 kilometers.
And the engineering precision, just using gravity.
Exactly. They maintained this really careful, slight downward slope, typically about 2 meters down for every kilometer forward. Just enough for gravity to keep the water flowing constantly.
Huge projects. Must have cost a fortune.
Immensely expensive, yes. But absolutely vital for a city the size of Rome, for public health, for the baths, for everything. A real symbol of Roman power, too.
Definitely. Okay, let's move into daily life. The toga. Iconic, but it looks so impractical.
It really was. That huge semicircle of wool, like 6 meters long. It was heavy, hot in summer, and basically made your left arm useless.
Hard to get dressed by yourself, I bet.
Definitely needed help, and that was kind of the point.
How so?
Wearing a toga showed you were wealthy enough, important enough, to have slaves to help you dress and manage this cumbersome garment. It screamed status.
So impracticality as a feature, not a bug.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Even when lighter clothes became common, Emperor Augustus actually made the toga mandatory for official occasions to reinforce that Roman identity.
Wow. Okay, what about bathing? The famous Roman baths, social hubs?
Oh, hugely important. Daily bathing was common if you had the time, but the thermae, the big public bath complexes, were much more than just places to get clean.
What else went on?
Everything. Exercise areas, pools, hot, cold, tepid saunas, libraries, shops, food stalls. You went there to socialize, network, hear the news. Like a community center and spa rolled into one.
Sounds amazing.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
how clean were they really, all these people?
Well, yeah. Marcus Aurelius, the emperor and philosopher, wasn't exactly complimentary. He described the baths as basically oil, sweat, dirt, greasy water.
Okay, so maybe not quite the pristine image we sometimes have.
Probably not, no. More. Communal soup.
Right. Okay, let's talk food. Roman dinner parties. Some pretty wild stories there, especially among the elite.
Yes. For the average Roman, food was about fuel. But elite banquets, those could be incredibly over the top, course after course, lasting for hours.
And the whole induced vomiting thing, was that real?
Seems like it, yes. At these marathon feasts, some guests would apparently make themselves sick to, well, make more room, to keep indulging.
Intense. And they even had specific slaves for cleanup. The vomit cleaner.
That delightful job title, yes. If someone didn't quite manage decorum, a slave was there to deal with it. It really highlights the extremes of wealth and, frankly, decadence.
Definitely a vivid image. But what about everyday food? What was the Roman equivalent of, say, ketchup or soy sauce, something everyone used?
Ah, that would absolutely be garum. Fish sauce.
Fish sauce on everything.
Pretty much. Meat, vegetables, grains.
Yeah.
Apparently even on fruit or dessert sometimes. They loved its salty, savory, umami flavor. Plus, they thought it was healthy, good source of protein.
Okay. Fermented fish sauce. How was it made? I have a feeling I don't want to know.
Well, you take fish guts, heads, other bits, small whole fish. Layer them with lots and lots of salt in big vats.
Okay.
Then you leave it out in the sun to ferment for weeks, maybe months. The salt and heat break it all down into this liquidy paste.
Oh, wow.
Then they'd strain off the liquid. That was garum. Apparently quite pungent. The leftover solids,
Yeah.
sometimes given to the very poor.
Okay. Definitely memorable. Let's move to entertainment. Something a bit less visceral. Chariot racing. That was huge, wasn't it?
Phenomenally huge. It was like the Super Bowl, Premier League football, everything rolled into one, but happening constantly.
And the Circus Maximus. The scale.
Enormous. Estimates vary, but it could hold maybe 150,000 people, maybe even more. Just imagine that crowd.
Wow. And there were teams, like sports teams today.
Exactly. The main factions were the Reds, Whites, Blues, and Greens. People were incredibly passionate fans. Fierce rivalries. Riots weren't uncommon.
Did they have, like, merchandise?
They had betting, for sure. And we've even found curse tablets, bits of lead, where fans wrote curses against rival drivers and horses, asking the gods to make them crash.
No way. Even emperors got involved.
Oh, yeah. Caligula, for example, was supposedly a massive fan of the Greens. It was woven into the fabric of Roman life.
Amazing. Okay, another famous form of entertainment. Gladiators. More brutal, obviously.
Yes, gladiatorial games. Also incredibly popular, but a different vibe. And expensive.
Expensive how? The gladiators themselves.
Exactly. A trained gladiator was a serious investment for their owner. Their lanista could cost, say, 1,000, 2,000 sesterces. That's multiple times a soldier's annual pay. Champions were worth far more.
So owners could make money how? Betting.
Betting, yes. Charging admission to the games they sponsored. Renting out their gladiators for other events. It was a business.
And the gladiators themselves, were they just slaves?
Many were slaves or prisoners of war, yes. But some were free men who chose the life, seeking fame or fortune. Successful gladiators could become huge celebrities.
Even popular with noble women.
There are accounts, yes. Some high-status women were apparently quite taken with famous gladiators, sometimes paying for their company. It's a complex picture. Dangerous life, but potential for fame.
Definitely complex. Okay, let's shift to the bedrock of Roman power. The military. The legions. How did they change over time?
They evolved quite a bit. Under the early kings, the legion was basically the whole army, a small citizen militia.
Just guys called up when needed?
Pretty much. Farmers, landowners. In the Republic, it became more structured. Legions of about 4,500 men. Started with maybe 2, then 4. During the big civil wars, you could have up to 50 legions. Still mostly citizens, though.
So when did it become the professional army we usually think of?
That big shift happened gradually, really picking up around the late 2nd, early 1st century BC. Arius's reforms were key.
What changed?
They needed a standing army for the expanding territories. So soldiers started signing up for fixed terms, 16, later 20, even 25 years. They got regular pay, equipment, and crucially, a promise of land when they retired honorably.
A real career path.
Exactly, a professional force. Under the emperors, the number stabilized, maybe 25 to 30 legions, mostly guarding the frontiers. Though later on, especially in the West, things got a bit fragmented and weakened at times.
Constant adaptation, it seems. Okay, let's touch on some famous names and moments. Julius Caesar. Everyone knows him.
Can't talk Rome without Caesar. A brilliant general, politician,
Yeah.
but also apparently quite vain about his hair loss.
Really? The laurel wreath thing.
That's the story. He wore that laurel wreath constantly, not just for triumph. Supposedly, it helped cover his receding hairline. The Senate even officially granted him the right to wear it. Anytime helps when you're becoming a dictator.
A permanent fashion accessory for vanity.
Oh, yeah.
What's next? Nero. He has quite the reputation.
Nero, yeah. Definitely one of the more infamous emperors. Some historians today might speculate about psychopathic traits, the lack of empathy, the impulsiveness.
He liked performing, didn't he? Singing, acting.
Loved it, which was considered deeply undignified for an emperor. Plus, his reign got increasingly paranoid and brutal. He had his own mother killed, his wife, many others.
Chilling. And his famous last words.
Qualis artifex perio. What an artist dies with me. Says a lot about his self-image, doesn't it?
Definitely. Okay, moving from Nero to the man often called the first emperor, Augustus.
Right. Caesar's adopted son, Octavian, who became Augustus. He came out on top after all those civil wars that followed Caesar's death. Took power in 27 BC.
But he managed not to get assassinated like Caesar.
He was much more politically savvy, perhaps. He maintained the illusion of the Republic while actually holding all the power. Ruled for over 40 years, established stability, and crucially, set up hereditary succession. That was the real end of the Republic.
The start of the empire proper. But even that massive empire eventually split. Why? Too big.
That was a huge part of it, yeah. Just governing and defending such a vast area became incredibly difficult. Communication was slow, rebellions popped up.
And maybe emperors weren't always up to the job.
Definitely. Periods of weak or corrupt leadership didn't help. The army sometimes became kingmakers. It got messy. Diocletian, late 3rd century, tried to fix it with a tetrarchy.
Rule by 4 emperors.
Yeah, 2 senior Augustes, 2 junior Caesars, an attempt to manage the empire better. But it didn't last long after he retired, led to more civil war.
So the split became permanent later.
After Emperor Theodosius, I died in 395 AD, he divided it between his 2 sons, Western Empire, based in Italy, and the Eastern Empire, based in Constantinople.
Which became the Byzantine Empire.
Exactly. And they had very different fates, obviously.
Right. Let's talk about a group often invisible in the grand narratives. Slaves. It was fundamental to Rome, wasn't it?
Absolutely fundamental. The economy, society, everything relied heavily on enslaved labor. For most, it was a lifelong, often inherited status.
But could they ever gain freedom?
Yes, it was possible, though not necessarily common or easy. An owner could free a slave that's manumission, or sometimes slaves could save up money, maybe from tips or side work, and literally buy their own freedom.
How much would that cost?
A lot, often their full market value, a significant hurdle.
But if they did get freed, what happened then?
Remarkably, upon being legally free, they automatically became Roman citizens. Full rights, privileges. It was quite extraordinary, really. A potential path from chattel to citizen.
That's fascinating. Okay, the big question. The fall, or maybe transformation, of the Western Roman Empire, what brought it about?
It's complex. No single cause. A long decline, really. Internally, you had huge problems. Political instability was chronic emperors constantly overthrown, civil wars,
Power struggles.
constant power struggles. The economy tanked too. Trade disrupted, high taxes, debased currency, maybe population decline in some areas. Public works stopped. The whole system was creaking.
So the West was weakening from within,
Wow.
and then came external pressure.
Big time. The famous barbarian invasions.
Yeah.
From the late 300s onwards, you get waves of groups moving into Roman territory. Goths, Vandals, Franks, often pushed by others, like the Huns moving out of Central Asia.
A domino effect.
Kind of, yeah. And the Western legions, often depleted, poorly led, struggling with internal issues. They just couldn't hold the lines everywhere anymore. Rome itself was sacked multiple times.
Until finally, 476 AD.
That's the traditional date, yeah. When the last Western Roman emperor, a young boy named Romulus Augustulus, was deposed by a Germanic general. It wasn't a sudden collapse one day, but more like a fading away of central authority in the West.
A long, slow unraveling. Okay, one more group to touch on the Christians. How did the Roman state view them initially?
With suspicion, mostly. The main issue wasn't their theology exactly, but their refusal to participate in the state cults.
Worshipping the traditional gods, offering incense to the emperor?
Right. Refusing to do that looked like disloyalty, like rejecting Roman authority and tradition. It could be seen as treasonous, almost.
Which led to persecutions.
Yes, periodically, not constantly, but under certain emperors like Nero or later Diocletian, Christians were targeted, seen as criminals for defying state religion.
And the punishments could be horrific. Damnatio ad bestias.
Execution by wild animals in the arena, yes, that was one possible fate. Though probably, for most ordinary Romans, Christians were just odd, following this strange, exclusive religion from the East.
A clash of worldviews, definitely. Wow, we've covered a huge amount of ground. Myths, emperors, roads, fish sauce.
We really have. From Aeneas to the fall of the West, the rise of Christianity, it's an incredible sweep of history.
So, looking back over all this, what really stands out to you? Any key takeaways?
For me, maybe it's the sheer adaptability and, well, endurance of Roman civilization for so long. Their engineering, their law, their ability to absorb other cultures, even as they conquered them.
Yeah, that mix of ruthlessness and pragmatism is striking. Like adopting Greek gods, but also building those hyper-practical roads.
Exactly. And maybe also the fragility in the end. Even this seemingly all-powerful empire wasn't immune to internal decay and external shocks.
That initial point about the roads really stuck with me too, designed for projecting power outwards. It says so much about their mindset.
It does. It shifts the perspective.
It makes you think about empires generally, doesn't it? The cycles of growth, stability, and eventual decline or transformation. The Romans just offer such a rich, well-documented case study.
Absolutely. Their legacy is still all around us in language, law, architecture, government.
So a final thought perhaps for you, the listener, to ponder. Given everything we've touched on, the myths, the infrastructure, the social dynamics, the eventual decline, what aspect of Roman civilization resonates most strongly today or offers the most potent lessons for our own time? There's certainly plenty to think about.